This is Carla Hinton reporting for the Oklahoman and NewsOK.com. I'm here in the studio with Major Wade Gourley with the Oklahoma City Police Department. He was a presenter at a recent workshop entitled Protecting Houses of Worship. The event was held Tuesday and it was well attended. About 400 people showed up to hear what law enforcement leaders had to say about the importance of developing a security plan for houses of worship and other related issues. Thanks for coming today, Major Gourley.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Well, the first question I have for you, what did you think about the workshop? It was well attended. What did you think about the workshop and the kinds of questions that they asked you?
I thought it was very good. It was timely with what's going on around the country and incidents that have happened recently. I was very pleased to see the turnout. My understanding in talking to the organizers is it started out, I believe, with around 200 participants is what they were planning for. And as it sign up and things were proceeding along, they actually had a really big turnout, and they had to expand the venue and expand the number of seats. So I was really glad that the community took an interest, and especially those that are involved in houses of worship. I thought it was very good for them to be there and have that interest.
Okay, good. Well, you know, what's interesting about this particular event was they planned this months in advance, but it just so happened that it occurred after the Orlando mass shooting. And of course, the people that were attending the workshop, they're not necessarily worried about a nightclub necessarily. They're talking about houses of worship. But both are open venues. You know, people are welcome. They're coming in. So it was very timely to have this sort of workshop, I thought.
Absolutely. And any place, no matter what the venue is, where people gather in large groups, always has to be looked at, because that's what people that are committing these active killings, as we call them, around the country, they want to target large groups of people. They want to do as much damage as they can in a short amount of time. And so I thought it very much was applicable, even though the situation in Orlando was a different venue or type of business, so to speak. It still applies, because you've still got large groups gathering, and, you know, people that are coming together and may not be as aware of their surroundings and things like that.
Okay. Why do you think houses of worship should be working to put a security plan in place?
It's just part of, you know, good safety for their parishioners and people that are attending the houses of worship. And it's anytime you have large groups of people coming together, it's always a good idea to think about safety and what would happen in certain events and things that would happen. And I think it's always good with any organization, any business. We plan for tornadoes, we plan for fires. I think just preparing for active threats and that type of thing is part of that planning as well. And it's just good management, good policy to take care of your people that are going to be attending your venues.
What do you think are some of the challenges that houses of worship may face as they seek to develop such a plan?
Some of those challenges are unique to houses of worship, but they can be similar as well to other places. And a house of worship is supposed to be an open and inviting place. I mean, we want people to come in. We want them to feel welcome. We want them, you know, to want to come in and worship and feel like they're a part of a family. And so it can kind of create some issues where if you're having armed security or other types of security visible, people may tend to not feel as welcome. And that's kind of the perception that's out there. But I really believe that perception is kind of the opposite nowadays. I think when people come to a place, any place where they're gathering in larger groups, they want to feel safe. And I think people that are looking at houses of worship now across the country are more looking for, what is this organization doing to keep me safe, and during the events that I'm attending here, what are they doing to help prepare me and keep me safe? And it's something that unfortunately we've dealt with. If you look at incidents around the country, it's not just businesses, it's not just schools. It has happened in places of worship in other areas around the country.
What are some simple things that houses of worship can do to put some effective security measures in place?
I think we have a tendency, based on what we see happening in the news and things around the country, to sometimes think about the big events. You know, just like the recent Orlando shooting. You know, we think of those type of things, and we should. We need to be prepared for those, but sometimes we forget about the smaller things, and those things you need to be prepared for as well when you're securing a facility. Think about how people can enter a facility, enter the house of worship. And what I always recommend is, you know, your exits have to be available. You always have to have exits that people can exit out of. Okay. But you can limit how they enter into the particular building. Okay. And so once services start, especially, limit the entrances and make sure somebody's there and monitoring those entrances where people can come in. Because oftentimes people criminals will target houses of worship when the services are going on because they know everybody's in one area, they're focused. So they may go to another part of the church where maybe people store their purses or their coats, or they may do things like burglarizing vehicles in the parking lots. And another thing that I always recommend too is having policies in place and procedures for how children are delivered to and picked up from nursery areas, lower age Sunday school classes, and just making sure that no one's going back there and picking up a child that doesn't, that shouldn't have that child. Make sure those kind of procedures in place. And those are kind of some simple things that they can do to at least get them in that mindset and start down that road. They don't have to have, you know, the real visible armed security, things like that. Just teaching their parishioners, their attendees to be aware. You know, if you see something, say something, that kind of mentality. And just teaching everybody in the church to be on the lookout for suspicious behavior.
Now, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I just think that, you know, in today's times, one of the things that I've done in my church in looking at procedures is actually looking at what we have in place for the different types of incidents that could happen with weather, fire, and those type of things, and just adding an active threat element to that. And making sure you have some written things in place that people can look at and know this is what we're going to do in an emergency. And I think anyone attending and coming into a house of worship has a responsibility to, as well. When you enter into that facility, be thinking about how would you get out of there if something happened. While you're sitting in church and you're enjoying the service and doing the things that go with the activities in the church is just always think about if something were to happen, if someone were to come in here and try to do harm, what would be my quickest exit? If I couldn't get out, you know, what would I do then? And we all subscribe to the run, hide, fight is kind of the standard around the country. If you can get away when an incident's happening, then do that. If you can get out, that's obviously your first goal, your primary goal. If you can't, where would you go to hide and shelter yourself? And then think about, too, being able to lock yourself inside a room or barricade yourself inside a room. And sometimes that can depend on circumstances. If you're a worker in the nursery area of the facility, you may not have as many options to run because you got to protect those kids as well. So thinking about how would I barricade, how would I lock myself up in the area. And then last but not least, you know, we always tell people, you've got nothing to lose if you're in a situation where you're facing an armed individual, you've got nowhere to go, you can't hide, you can't run, and you're there with them. You know that their intent, they've already killed people or been harming people in the facility. You know what their intent is, and so you really have nothing to lose at that point. And that's when we tell people that it's, you know, it's okay to fight. I mean, you got to do what you can to save your life.
Okay, I like that. Run, hide, fight. That's pretty simple.
Very simple, and that's why we want to do that. And I tell a lot of people too, when you're writing these plans, that's a basic way to start your plan. You don't have to get real involved with it. You don't have to have a lot of law enforcement experience or anything like that, just to be very simple in what you do. The more simple a plan is, the easier it is to impart it to the individuals that are going to have to follow that plan in an emergency.
Interesting. Well, thank you so much for coming today.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here. I
really appreciate it, and I hope everybody got some important information that you can use at your own house of worship. This is Carla Hinton reporting for The Oklahoman and NewsOK.com. For more information, read The Oklahoman.